Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S4 4017 Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan 4 by Jane Mason and Sarah Stevens. Chapter 1 Special Session. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker sat in the council chamber with several other Jedi. Master Mace Windu had called a special session. These special meetings were becoming more and more common. War was raging. The Jedi were the guardians of the threatened Republic. But Obi-Wan sensed something different about this session. Could it be a turning point? Were they on the brink of something big? He hoped so. The war seemed never-ending. The Jedi and their clone army fought against the Separatists and the droid armies. But the Separatists had more than droids on their side. They had the evil Sith Lord Count Dooku and his henchman, General Grievous. General Grievous has been located, Mace announced. He's on the planet Utapa. Obi-Wan suppressed a shudder. General Grievous was the supreme commander of the droid armies. Long ago, Grievous had been a general on his home world, Kaylee. Then he was almost killed in a shuttle crash. The Sith had been watching Grievous. They needed a leader for their droids. They kept him alive. They hired a Geonosian cyborg expert to combine his living parts with the hard ceramic shell. And that was not all. Count Dooku himself trained Grievous to fight with a lightsaber. With his cyborg body and Sith training, Grievous had become a dangerous enemy to the Jedi. We have received no reports about Grievous from our agents on Utapa. The Ki-80 Mundai said. The Jedi with the tall, pointed head looked troubled. A partial message was intercepted in a diplomatic packet, Anakin said. It was from the leader of Utapa. Yoda spoke quietly but firmly. Act on this, we must. He tapped the gimmer stick on the ground for emphasis. All of the Jedi on the council agreed. Obi-Wan noticed that Anakin sat up a bit straighter. The Chancellor has requested that I lead the campaign, Anakin announced. The council chamber was silent. The other Jedi were clearly troubled. Mace Windu's eyes revealed his annoyance. The council will decide who is to go, not the Chancellor. Anakin just stared at the floor. Obi-Wan knew the council was right. The Jedi were defenders of the Republic, but they did not take orders from any one leader, and Chancellor Palpatine was proving harder and harder to trust. Obi-Wan wanted to talk to Anakin alone and help him understand. A master is needed. A Jedi with more experience. Our resources are limited, Mace added. I recommend we send only one Jedi, Master Kenobi. Chapter 2 Hostages. Obi-Wan stood next to his purple and gray Jedi fighter in the Republic battlecruiser hangar. Several clone commanders were lined up before him. Most of the cities on Utapa are on one small continent. We should be able to land undetected if we approach from the far side, said Clone Commander Cody. I'll keep them distracted until you arrive, Obi-Wan said. But don't take too long. Obi-Wan felt confident, climbing into his Jedi fighter. The last time Obi-Wan had battled Grievous, the general had fled in his escape pod. But this time, Obi-Wan had two clone trooper brigades to help him. Commander Cody would not let him down. Soon Obi-Wan was skimming over the surface of Utapau. The green planet appeared featureless at first. Then Obi-Wan noticed a few small rock spires and something else. Enormous sinkholes bored deep into the planet. These giant holes were so big that they housed entire cities. Obi-Wan landed skillfully on a platform inside one of the giant sinkholes. Local administrator named Tion Medon met Obi-Wan as he stepped out of his ship. "Greetings, young Jedi," Tion said. "What brings you to our remote sanctuary?" Obi-Wan looked steadily at the local. He appeared friendly, but Obi-Wan sensed he was hiding something. "The war," Obi-Wan said. "There is no war here unless you have brought it with you," Tion assured him. Obi-Wan's gaze did not falter. "With your kind permission, I would like some fuel and to use your city as a base to search nearby systems." Tion nodded and a ground crew rushed out to refuel Obi-Wan's fighter. "What are you searching for?" Tion asked. "A drone army led by General Grievous," Obi-Wan said. Tion leaned in close to Obi-Wan. "He's here," he whispered. "We are being held hostage. They are watching us." Obi-Wan nodded. His heart raced, but his face revealed nothing. His information and instincts had been correct. "I understand," he said. "The 10th level," Tion confided. "Thousands of battle droids. Have your people take shelter," Obi-Wan said quietly. "And if you have warriors, now is the time." Obi-Wan had found his foe. Chapter 3, Finding Transport. "What was his name?" General Grievous's droid bodyguard demanded. He stood with the Tion Medon and the Utapau observation deck. The administrator shrugged. He didn't say. Above them, the Jedi fighter zoomed into space. "I told you." All he wanted was fuel, but in the landing platform hallway, Obi-Wan also watched his ship take off. Jedi's astromech droid Alpha G9 flew the ship while Obi-Wan stayed hidden underground. He quietly moved up a stairway cut into the side of the sinkhole. Obi-Wan paused to survey the city and come up with a plan. The sinkhole walls were sheer cliffs, levels of buildings cut deep into the sides. Here and there, structures struck out toward the center, and a few spires towered in the middle. Windmills with whirling propellers cut air draft and provided power to the city. Obi-Wan looked at the 10th level with his binocular. It was several hundred meters above him. He needed a fast way up. A strange, bellowing cry interrupted Obi-Wan's thought. He followed the sound to a corral filled with a dozen dragon-like lizards and their wranglers. The beasts of burden were perfectly suited to travel on Utapau. They could scale walls with their sticky reptilian feet. Obi-Wan walked up to one of the wranglers. He waved his hand slightly and began to speak. He was using the Force. "I need transportation," he said. The wrangler watched Obi-Wan's hand as if in a daze. "You need transportation," he repeated. "Get it for me," Obi-Wan said. "I'll get it for you," the wrangler replied. He turned to the other wranglers and began talking in his native tongue. Obi-Wan walked along the line of dragon lizards. He examined each one carefully, looking into its cat-like eyes. Then he made his decision. "This one," he told the wrangler. The wrangler untied the lizard. "The boga," she answers to boga, he said. Obi-Wan swung himself easily onto Boga's back. The lizard reared up, scurried to the edge of the sinkhole. The Jedi patted the lizard on the neck. "Good girl, Boga," he said. Obi-Wan wasn't used to working alone. It felt good to be part of a team again. The battling the bodyguard. Obi-Wan guided Boga straight up the wall of the sinkhole, past buildings and balconies. Finally, they reached the 10th level. The Jedi and Boga stepped into the middle of the huge separatist control center. General Grievous towered at the far end of the room. His skull-like faceplate protected evil eyes. His long arms ended in mechanical claws. He looked strong enough to crush anything in his path. General Kenobi, Grievous said. "You're a bold one, but I find your behavior bewildering. Surely you realize you're doomed." 100 battle droids made a circle around Obi-Wan, General Grievous, and his robot bodyguard. The Jedi paid them no mind. "Not this time," Obi-Wan said confidently. "And this time you won't escape." The bodyguard just swung their electro steps. The Jedi ducked, allowing the steps to whistle over his head. Before the guards could react, Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber and cut one of them in half. The battle had begun. As the bodyguard fell to the ground in a heap, Grievous cut its electro staff. The 3 remaining bodyguards wasted no time. They lunged at Obi-Wan. All around them, battle droids kept their weapons trained on Jedi and the bodyguards. Grievous was motionless, still holding the electro staff. He watched the battle between Obi-Wan and his 3 guards closely. Electro steps and lightsabers slid through the air with fury. Obi-Wan leaped lightly away from the deadly steps as the bodyguards tracked him across the room. He used the Force to anticipate the guards' next moves and evade them. More than once, a spectator battle droid was cut down in the fight. At last, Obi-Wan broke away. The bodyguards gave chase, their steps hissing in the air. Then Obi-Wan slid through a metal strut that was holding up a large cargo container. With a loud crunch, the container fell and crushed the 3 remaining guards. Chapter 5, Outnumbered. "Blast him!" Grievous commanded furiously. The battle droids surrounding Obi-Wan fired their weapons. Laser bolts rained all around the lone Jedi. Jumping into the air, Obi-Wan grabbed the cable hanging from the ceiling. The odds were against him, but the Force was all around. He called on it as he swung upward, deflecting a barrage of laser bolts with his lightsaber. A moment later, he disappeared into a tangled mass of equipment hanging just below the ceiling. Kaboom! The droids fired so many laser bolts into the equipment that they caused a huge explosion. Flaming pieces of metal crashed to the floor. Obi-Wan gracefully leaped down along with the fiery metal. Igniting the lightsaber, he cut down several more battle droids. When the smoke finally cleared, Obi-Wan found himself face to face with the General Grievous. It was the moment he had been waiting for. "Attack, Kenobi," Grievous said. "I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku himself." Obi-Wan knew he should not take the general's skills lightly. Grievous had killed more Jedi than anyone else. Still, Obi-Wan did not feel afraid. Suddenly, the general's mechanical arms each divided in 2. All at once, he pulled 4 lightsabers from his belt. Obi-Wan recognized with sadness that these lightsabers had once belonged to his fellow Jedi Knights. With effort, Obi-Wan cleared his mind. He focused on the task at hand. Revenge is not the Jedi way. Obi-Wan needed to win this battle for the good of the Republic. Grievous sprang into action with 4 flashing lightsabers. 2 fighters whirled in a deadly display of swordsmanship. Obi-Wan wielded his weapon with strength and grace. It was barely enough. He scrambled to defend himself against the attack, desperately deflecting the flashing lightsabers. He crossed the control room. On every side, the remaining battle droids fired at him. Obi-Wan was in trouble. Chapter 6, Fighting Back. Obi-Wan gathered his strength. He wouldn't give up. Grievous was a terrible foe, but the Force was stronger. Obi-Wan called on it. He wielded his lightsaber with incredible speed, knocking Grievous's blades to the ground. First one, then another, and another, until all 4 of the cyborg's weapons were gone. It seemed like Obi-Wan was going to win the fight when the droids fired more laser bolts into the air. Grievous disappeared in the smoky battle. Obi-Wan fell down. His lightsaber skittered across the floor and stopped in front of a super battle droid. Careful with that, a battle droid warned. As the super battle droid picked it up, it's a lightsaber. Super battle droid inspected the weapon. A what? He asked. He did not have time to hear the answer. He ignited the lightsaber by mistake and cut off his own head. Hold your fire, Grievous's voice suddenly echoed the smoke-filled chamber. Obi-Wan was nowhere to be seen. What are you trying to accomplish, Kenobi? Grievous shouted. I have thousands of troops. You will not defeat them. Out of nowhere, Obi-Wan jumped into the air and reached for his lightsaber. It flew toward him and landed firmly in his hand. A split second later, the Jedi landed on top of a control station. I may not defeat your droids, but my troops certainly will. Obi-Wan said, your troops will never penetrate my defenses, Grievous replied. Don't count on it, Obi-Wan said. Chapter 7, Heating Up. An explosion echoed through the sinkhole. Grievous and Obi-Wan both looked toward the command center entrance. Outside, clone troopers fiercely attacked battle droids. On the far wall of the sinkhole, more clone troopers rappelled onto balconies. Dozens of clone troopers descended into the entrance of the control center. They blasted their weapons at the droids. The room was instantly filled with flying laser bolts, debris, and smoke. Troops had arrived. Obi-Wan could focus his attack on Grievous instead of battling droids. He attacked again. Grievous fought back with an electrostab to match each other, blow for blow. The general was too strong. Obi-Wan knew he needed to find a weakness to gain the upper hand. A blast from a super battle droid distracted Obi-Wan momentarily. Was all the general needed. Obi-Wan did not sense Grievous's next move until it was too late. The general delivered a swift blow that sent the Jedi skidding across the floor. General Grievous jumped onto his wheel bike and fled. Obi-Wan jumped to his feet, but General would not get away this time. Obi-Wan was determined. Swiftly he mounted Boga and gave chase, moving quickly down the wall of the sinkhole. Obi-Wan spotted Grievous ahead of them. Grievous spun his wheel bike around and took off in another direction. Obi-Wan and Boga were hot on his heels. All around droids and clones battles. Some of the people of Europa fought with the clones against the droids. Others hid in whatever shelter they could find. Obi-Wan and General Grievous huddled through the city at breakneck speed. They passed battle zones, exploding buildings, and troops of all kinds. Boga panted as she tried to keep up with Grievous's wheel bike. Obi-Wan knew how she felt. He was tiring too, but he urged the big lizard on. You can do it, girl, he said. Grievous led Obi-Wan to an area covered with a giant windmill the Jedi had seen when he landed. The windmill blades were enormous. They were steel, but not for long. From the other side of a windmill, Grievous released the brakes on one of the giant propellers. The huge blades began to spin with deadly speed. They made a little barrier, but it stopped short. General Grievous was out of reach. Laughing evilly, Grievous switched on his comlink. Prepare to move out of orbit, he said to his command ship above. I will be up in a few moments. Chapter 8, the chase continues. Obi-Wan took a moment to size up the situation. He had to get to Grievous, and quickly he gently coaxed his reptilian steed closer to the deadly blaze. Then he ignited his lightsaber and forced it into the whirling windmill. Pieces of metal blade flew in all directions. Obi-Wan barely avoided being hit. Several meters away, Grievous accelerated over a huge gap. He activated the claws of his wheel bike. A moment later, the bike's strong legs and claws clung to a second set of windmill blades. Obi-Wan urged Boga forward, and the lizard leaped across the gaping hole. Though they barely made it to the other side, General Grievous was already racing ahead. Obi-Wan followed Grievous into the upper tunnel system. Zooming up the tunnel walls in his wheel bike, Grievous easily avoided the oncoming traffic. Boga used the lizard feet to cling to the tunnel ceiling. Obi-Wan closed the distance between them. Trusting in Boga and the Force, Obi-Wan reached out and grabbed the general's electro-step. Locked together, Obi-Wan and Grievous raced out of the tunnel onto a secret landing platform. A Trade Federation fighter sat in the middle of it. Yanking on the staff, Obi-Wan jumped from Boga's back to the general's wheel bike. They were both knocked to the ground. The Grievous pulled out a blaster pistol and fired. Obi-Wan deflected the bolts with Grievous's own electro-step. The Jedi felt his energy return. The battle had gone on long enough. Obi-Wan charged, swinging the electro-step and hitting the half-machine in the stomach. The Grievous's blaster pistol slid across the floor. Obi-Wan struck again, this time bending the general's arm. Grievous was furious. He grabbed Obi-Wan, knocked away the electro-step. It was down to hand-to-hand combat. Cyborg versus Jedi. Chapter 9, Victory. Obi-Wan used every ounce of concentration to avoid the general's deadly blow. Grievous was powerful. His machine parts and Sith training made him seem unstoppable. Obi-Wan leaped, ducked, and dove to avoid being killed. He was tired, but he believed in the Force. He waited for his opportunity. At last, Obi-Wan spotted a weakness in the general's defenses. His stomach plate had been knocked loose. Obi-Wan did not waste a second. He grabbed the plate, pulling it off completely. Now the cyborg's alien guts were visible. Apart from the eyes, the only living part of the horrible general was in a big bag inside his metal chest. The Grievous's arm seized Obi-Wan, lifted him into the air, and tossed him across the landing platform. Then he charged. A split second before Grievous was upon him, Obi-Wan extended his hand. He used the Force to call the general's blaster pistol to him. Several laser bolts hit Grievous in the belly. The general exploded from the inside out. What remained of the smoldering cyborg fell to the ground. Relief washed over Obi-Wan. He had completed his mission. The evil Grievous had been stopped for good. Obi-Wan looked forward to sharing the news with Anakin and the Jedi Council. The end of General Grievous was a big step toward the peace. The end.